Okay, to end this beginning chapter on the attack on the uncastled king, we're going to go through another example of a famous game which shows the f7, f2 sacrifice. This game is between you and Rubinstein in 1921. Seems like we have some good attacking games in these knight f6 lines of the Sicilian. Better is knight c3, but okay. d4. So this game is actually going to be a win for black, so maybe the opening has nothing to do with it. Okay, so c4 is a question mark. Bishop c4 is a lot better, and c4 is supposed to be a weak move. Okay, so after c4, knight c6. Knight d to e7 exclam. So knight puts pressure on the e5 pawn. Looks like bishop c3 might have been a little better. But after bishop c3, queen c7, the queen has to come to e2 anyway. So white just plays queen e2. And we transpose. Now b6. By developing his own pieces calmly, black is making the best possible use of the difficulties experienced by white, who now cannot even fianchetto. For example, if g3, well, in the game I'll just say that white plays h4, but here we're going to go through g3 for a second. After g3, question mark, bishop b7, bishop g2, we have knight takes e5. And let's say something like this. Wins a pawn for black. Not to mention they have two bishops here. Okay. So h4. d6 exclam. Pawn takes d6, bishop takes d6. Black is now both better developed and more powerful in the center. White's troubles would only be further increased after bishop g7. In the game, white plays knight to b to d2. So if bishop g7, we have rook g8, bishop c3, and knight f4, in a good attacking position for black. So in the game we have knight b d2, knight f4, queen e3, bishop c5, queen e4, f5, queen c2. The queen 6 move, which is not a very good track record for when you're behind in development. Okay, castles g3, knight g6, h5. Because of white's weakness in the center, the pursuit of the knight ends in its centralization. Knight g to e5, knight takes, b4. White cannot castle queenside because of the bishop's attack on f2. So he tries to employ power tactics. However, the use of force from a weaker position usually prompts a still more forceful reply from one's opponent. That's a really important lesson, which I've talked about in my other chess lectures. For example, the lecture titled How I Beat a Chess Master. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry, not that lecture. It was the game Tal Tringov, which I do have a rap song coming out at some point in the future about. It's already been written, just hasn't been recorded. But Tal Tringov is an excellent game, and that's one example of when one side is less well developed and they try to make an aggressive move, it's often met with a more aggressive move from the side that's better developed. Rubinstein, who's playing black, naturally does not withdraw the bishop but captures on f2. In exchange for a piece, he gets 2 pawns in an attack, which is more than sufficient in this position seeing that he is better developed and that the extra pawns are in the center. Bishop takes f2, exclaim. King takes f2. Knight g4, check. King e2. The king cannot go to e1 or g1 because of queen takes g3, check with mate. Okay, so here, king e2. Now we have queen takes g3, bishop to d4, bishop b7, rook h3, queen to d6, attacking g2, g7, and e5. White has averted the direct mating attack, but now black's centralized pawns come into their own. In such position, they are as valuable as pieces. Bishop g1. I think that watching these lectures, I'm hoping that it gives you a sense of what types of positions lead to winning attacks, and specifically the concept of the initiative. I think watching a lot of examples of winning attacks will help you see in your own games when it's important to develop and ways to develop attacks. And also, of course, you'll be looking at sacrifices on the f7 and f2 square and ways to open up the e file when you're playing your games. So bishop g1 and now f4, c5, queen h6, king e1, e4. So this just looks crushing for black. The king's stuck in the center and the pawns are rolling down the center. Okay, rook h4, queen to g5, queen h3, hitting the knight. Knight e3, exclaim. So let's see why this is good. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Now the bishop comes out check, king h8, knight f1. So what if they took here? Then white wins the rook. Sorry, black wins the rook. Sorry, there's a computer malfunction there. Okay, takes, bishop c4 check, king over. So now we're saying, what if knight takes e4? Then white wins the rook. Okay, so knight f1 is played. You'll have to forgive the developers of the ICC Max software because they seem to care not as much about chess as they should. Okay, so after knight f1, black plays queen to f6, and it's game over. In the tumult of the battle, it is at the point which the white's king's original wound was inflicted on f2 is finally decisive. So this concludes our chapter on the study on the attack on the uncastled king. And just to review this game, well, first let's just make sure we know why it's game over. So black's threat is queen f2 and bringing the rook over. Actually, so let's say white plays a nothing move. We have queen f2 and check, and now e2. And the bishop has to sacrifice itself. And we can see that the knight's hit, mate's threatened. There's nothing. There's no way to prevent this game from. You can just go check, and here, and force mate. I hope it's clear. But let's just go back to look at the sacrifice, because it's not always obvious. So one thing that's kind of cool about this is that when b4 is played, it actually makes it a lot harder for the king to find safety on the queen side, so it makes the sacrifice have a little bit more power. And just b4 just doesn't seem like a good move at all, but b4 you want to just pay attention to opportunities to sacrifice on f2.